Hey there everybody, it's Askew 2000 and I wanted to do kind of a quick knife review and comparison video of this new knife I picked up. This is the Benchmade North Fork. I believe the model number is 15031-2. And all in all, I really do like the knife. I really like it for aesthetic purposes, and it's a very rugged, durable knife. So there's definitely a lot of positives when it came into the design of this knife that I prefer. There's a few things that I'll talk about that I definitely don't appreciate, I guess, with the knife. But again, overall, I think it is kind of a win for Benchmade. So it's part of their Hunt class knives, and the Hunt class sort of replaced the Lone Wolf and Bone Collector series that they used to have. And they're really moving a lot towards kind of this traditional style or just traditional look when it comes to their knives. So I really like the knives that have the diamond wood scales on it. You can pick up this knife with G10 scales, where they have sort of black and gray layered G10. It sort of looks like wood. But again, I sort of prefer the look and feel of the diamond wood. So diamond wood, if you don't know, is kind of a resin impregnated wood. I don't know what type of wood they use. I want to say it's like maple or birch or something. And then they kind of layer it on there and you get kind of the look and sort of the feel of wood, but it's far more resistant to the elements. So since this is part of their Hunt series, Benchmade's sort of thinking that, well, you know, if you get blood on it, it's not going to stain the wood. If you get rain or water on it for any reason, it's not going to warp it or do anything like that. So again, it's far more resistant to the elements, and it's easily maintainable, and you don't have to oil it or do anything like that. So I think that's a great choice, a great scale material that they chose to use. With a lot of the Benchmade knives that they have, it comes in S30V steel. S30V sort of used to be considered kind of a super steel, and I think that's kind of why Benchmade's running on the price point that they are for these knives. But more or less, it's kind of become sort of the industry standard. There's certainly better steels out there. But S30V is great, all in all. I like it because it was designed specifically for pocket knives. Crucible really worked with a lot of the knife manufacturers to come up with a powder steel that works well and suits most of the purposes. So, you know, as long as Benchmade continues to run with it, I think it's a great steel option. A little bit harder to sharpen, but regardless, it's still a great steel. In their blade shape, so they decided to go with kind of a drop point, but they did add a little bit of a recurve to it. Now, some people will say that the recurve is really unnecessary, and perhaps that's true, but I sort of feel that if you're using this for hunting, you know, skinning, doing whatever you need, you do get a little boost of cutting power once you hit that secondary curve. So there is a purpose behind why there's a recurve there. And additionally, it adds a little bit of flair to the knife. So it looks a little bit different than all of Benchmade's other drop point blades that they have out there. So, you know, I don't mind it so much. I actually kind of like the blade shape that they chose for it. With a lot of their Hunt class knives, so that they're really putting kind of this aggressive jimping here on the palm. You have some jimping near the thumb, and then you also have some jimping kind of for index or precision cutting that you need to do. So I think all of those elements put together come through really, really nicely. So as you can probably imagine, because it's part of the Hunt class, this is really geared towards hunters. But truthfully, I wouldn't prefer this a folding blade for hunting. You know, my main issue is that you get a lot of blood and guts and hair and whatever else that you are trying to remove or process. They get up in the axis lock mechanism, which, you know, this knife is designed so you can really just rinse it under a faucet or in a river or something like that. It'll be fine. It's stainless steel, so you're not going to have you have pretty good corrosion resistance on it. The scales are designed to get wet. So it's cleanable if you do that, but I just prefer a fixed blade when it comes to hunting and processing game. So for me, this probably wouldn't be my go-to when it comes to a hunting knife. And in terms of everyday carry, which I think a lot of people would use this for, it also is just, for me, again, this is strictly for me, it's just a tad too heavy. So I think it weighs in at about 3.16. It's a little heavier on the G10 scaled version, weighing in closer to 3.5 ounces. And granted, that's not much, but it is bulky and somewhat noticeable when it's in your pocket. So, when I have a knife for everyday carry, I really want to forget that it's in my pocket and have no idea that it's there. This one I do sort of notice over time, that it kind of weighs down a little bit. So the knife I prefer for everyday carry is the Benchmade Bugout. That weighs in at about like 1.8 or 1.9 ounces. Ridiculously light. But one of the problems with the Bugout is the scales are kind of flimsy, right? So you can actually squeeze them together if you pushed really hard. This knife is far more robust. I guess the intended purposes for me might be a heavy duty everyday carry. So if you're going to be out there whaling on your knife or doing some really hard tasks, this would probably be a great one to take with you, because it is really solid. It fills the palm really nicely, and you don't have to worry about it. For everyday, like cutting open boxes and whatever else, this just doesn't quite fit the bill for me, though I think a vast majority of people would find that it suits their purposes just fine. So in terms of use, that's probably what I'm going to go for. When it comes to a hunting knife, I would actually prefer something like this. So this is the Benchmade Hidden Canyon Hunter. It's from the same class. It looks very similar in many regards, but it's certainly a much more powerful fixed blade option. I really like the blade shape here. Again, it has a lot of that jimping for both the thumb and the index finger here. I'm really attracted to these diamond wood scales. I'm glad that they're putting diamond wood on a lot of their knives. This one you do also have a G10 scale option, but again, just for looks, I really do prefer that diamond wood. Some of the issues that people have had with the Hidden Canyon Hunter, if you're looking for a hunting knife, primarily involve the sheath. So I like the looks of the sheath. They did this too with their Bushcrafter. They have a very similar sheath for it. So some of the biggest issues that people have had is when they're removing their knife, if you come down at any form of an angle, you're just going to cut right through the stitching on the sheath itself. So it'd be nice if they had kind of a plastic insert to sort of prevent that, but that is one noted problem. A second problem is with the clasp here. So when you open it, if you're trying to draw out quickly, if you don't get the clasp out of the way, you can just draw your knife right across it. You can see I've done it a few times already. And there's a lot of folks who are actually missing this part because they just cut it right off with their knives. So those are some of the big issues that come with the Hidden Canyon Hunter. And that's, again, sort of the downside of a fixed blade is that you have to have a sheath for it, whereas a folder, you can just throw in your pocket. Some of the other small issues, and this doesn't bother me as much, but you only have the option with the Hidden Canyon Hunter of scout carry. So, it's going to be kind of resting horizontally on your belt if you're doing that. I don't everyday carry this knife, so I'm not really concerned about people seeing the handle poke through my shirt or something. I do sort of wear it at the 2 o'clock position with the handle sort of facing inward. That way it kind of reduces the profile a little bit and it feels a little bit more comfortable. Some people wear it sort of at the 4 o'clock position for the same reason. But I just want to have it kind of close and accessible if I am out in the field and I do need to pull it out for whatever reason. So the sheath is the biggest issue here. Blade length is probably not the most ideal for a hunting knife. It's a little bit short, but you do really get nice precision cuts. So it would be excellent for processing, small to medium sized game, if that's what your intended purposes are. So, these are the two knives that I got, kind of from Benchmade's Hunt class. Lastly, just to kind of mention, a lot of people will say, out of the box that these knives are perfect. I would disagree with that. One thing I had to do is I touched up the edge. I noticed that both of these knives, when I got them, would not shave hair off the back of my arm right out of the box. So I just touched them up for a little bit on my Spyderco Sharp Maker. Benchmade's gotten a lot better at their edge angles. So they're coming out of the factory with like 30 to 40 degree edges. They used to be atrocious, like 50 to 60 degree edges. But they've listened to their customers and know that they want knives that are sharper and easier to maintain. So the Spyderco Sharp Maker is perfect because it's set up for 30 or 40 degrees. I touched this one up on the 40 degree stones, and it came out hair popping sharp just after maybe 20 or so passes, and it worked out great. I had to do the same thing with the Hidden Canyon Hunter. It just wasn't quite sharp enough for me. So it's something to consider when you pick these up from the box. Blade centering is a little off. You can see it's just a little bit to the left there. And that's okay. As long as it's not hitting up against the scales, I really don't have too much of a concern for blade centering. I could center it better if I wanted to. But again, unless there's some kind of damage that's occurring because of that, I'm not going to worry about it. And the last thing is that when it came out of the box, this knife in particular, the axis lock was just a little bit tight. You can probably see, even right there, I didn't quite get it out when I gave it a pretty good push on the thumb stud. So I did have to loosen the pivot screw just a little bit. Just take extreme caution when you do that, because if you go too far loose, it'll open really nicely, but you'll get some side-to-side blade play. So you really have to kind of find the sweet spot. So loosen it, check for blade play, and then slightly tighten it just to the point where you have zero blade play, but you can flick it open fairly easily. Another way to do that is to just open and close your knife, a few hundred times. It'll kind of wear itself in and work out just fine. But if you want to kind of quickly access the kind of the sweet spot on the axis lock, you might have to do an adjustment of that pivot screw. But otherwise, I like everything else about the knives. I think they're two really great options from Benchmade. So if you're interested, check them out. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Thanks.